And then, of course, I got onto what you call this thing, Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So there's this whole networking with lawyers group and whatever, and you get to interact with people. And then that's how I started to interact with like other pre-law students and paralegals or whatever, or whoever studied for LSAT. So we kind of like came about creating our own room in Clubhouse. And then we realized, hey, we can talk about this thing, but I think it's better if we get on Zoom so we can actually share our board, and, things like that. So I started interacting with a few folks where, every other day we get on a Zoom and then we exchange ideas and how to, and I think the fact that the way I understand it may not be the way somebody else understands it, or I may not understand something, but hearing somebody who's trying just like me and how they understood the concept and how it made sense to them and how they explain it, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. It clicks, so I'm there. And I think, with the fact that we all pretty much stuck home most days, it would make sense for me to actually allocate enough time, whether mainly in the evening or on the weekend, to go over ideas and even, understand the concept and practice, because really that's what it comes to. Hey, you read the question and it becomes second nature. And then I think you also mentioned that if you maximize and you get everything right in logic game, you can afford to have 2 or 3 wrongs in another section, because having 100% there can actually push you further versus, well, having less right and less right everywhere else. So the more you get right, and then the better it gets for you with your score. So I'm like, hey, why not? He knows what he's talking about.
There's so much you said that I'd love to unpack, Stan. I mean, one thing you said about Clubhouse, and I've spent some time on Clubhouse and played around there as well. I love it for connection and for interactivity, but as you said, there's no visual component there. So there are certain conveniences to that if you're in a setting where you can't be on camera. But at the same time, for drawing logic games, for example, you want to have a whiteboard. And there's also a certain element to seeing people's facial expressions and body language, right? I mean, like, I love podcasts. I have a daily podcast. This will be a podcast. But there's been so much nonverbal communication just in terms of facial expressions in a conversation that are incredibly important to really see, is somebody getting it? Is it sticking? Do we need to go another direction to thoroughly cover this topic, whatever we're talking about? So I get what you're saying. The Zoom meetings are so much better, and you can use Zoom for study groups, which is fantastic. We have organized study groups in the course as well, actually. And so I definitely encourage you to attend, since you've already been getting value out of that. And then, of course, we have the live classes as well, different nights covering logic games, logical reasoning, reading comprehension, admissions, and of course, the group coaching mastermind. Now, you mentioned games. I do recommend aiming for perfection on games. I recommend aiming for perfection on everything, of course. I recommend aiming for 180, aiming for the top score, aiming to understand everything thoroughly. But when we look at what the typical 170 score looks like, it is, as I said, typically perfect or maybe -1 on games. And then you have more ambiguities of language on the other sections, which can lead to a few more points getting lost there. And that's really an area where I'd recommend reviewing if you're struggling there. And we do that in the course as well using the Socratic review method. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.